Hi, everyone. My name is Sam from EHE Health, and we are so excited to be able to bring you a sheet pan salmon recipe. So we're going to be doing honey Dijon salmon with sweet and spicy Brussels sprouts. And I'm joined by Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Lowden. I am a on-site well-being coordinator with EHE, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be cooking with Sam today.
I'm really excited too. So as I said, my name is Sam Nuzio, and I am a well-being program manager here at EHE Health. And I'm also a registered dietitian. So I absolutely love to cook and make recipes a little bit easier for people to make at home and just using stuff that we already have in our cabinets. That's something I'm really passionate about. So I'm really excited to get started today. All right. So first thing we're going to do, as you guys can see, I actually have my salmon, you can see my little piece of salmon here, placed on a sheet pan. So a couple of things I will say, this is going to be made for my husband and I. So it's a half a pound of salmon that I put here on our sheet pan, and that's going to serve 2 people. So that's what I went with today. And we're going to be making a little dressing kind of thing for the top of it. So I'm going to have you grab something small. I have a small ramekin and a whisk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Dijon mustard. And I'm probably going to put in about, as you guys will notice, oh my gosh, guys, wait, can we just laugh at what just happened? This went all over me. Okay. Sorry.
While you're doing that, I'm going to re-pull my parchment because it's too small.
Sorry, Erin, I should have told you I was having the salmon laid out.
No, you're good. I'm going to probably do it on the plate and then I'll lay it out just so that.
Yeah, I stumble with the parchment paper because we don't have a good way of like breaking it off. So I did it beforehand. Okay. Let me know when you're ready to get started again.
I'm good.
Okay. So first we're going to grab Dijon. Oh, let me give it another second. Sorry. So first we're going to grab Dijon mustard. And I love using Dijon mustard as a spread in salad dressings, but I especially love it on salmon because it does give a really nice flavor. So I'm going to put about, I would say for a half a pound, probably about a teaspoon in here. Just give it 2 pretty good squeezes. And then I'm also going to use some honey as well. So I'm making a honey Dijon for our salmon. So I'm going to just give the honey a good squeeze. And I would say for this, it's really as much as you'd like. I tend to go a little less sweet with the honey. So I would say maybe half a teaspoon. My honey is being temperamental. Okay. And then what I'm going to do from there is I'm going to whisk up our honey Dijon.
Is this typically how you make salmon, Sam?
I love to make salmon like this, again, just because it gives it such nice flavor. But I also like to just use a little lemon juice and then some fresh herbs also when I bake salmon. Erin, what's your favorite way to do it?
I usually do just lemon. This is the first time I've ever done a dressing on top of it. So I'm really excited to see how it comes out.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have a brush that I rarely get to use. So I'm really excited to use a kitchen brush here. And I'm going to be just brushing this on the salmon. And then we're going to add some salt and pepper on top as well. And I will say with something like this, as a dietitian, we learned a lot about food safety. So whenever something is touching the raw salmon, just make sure it goes right into the sink. Or if you touch it with your hand, just make sure you wash your hands whenever you're cooking. It seems like something that's intuitive, but sometimes we forget, and especially while we're cooking, it can be tricky. Okay, so I have a nice layer of our little dressing here. I'm just going to add a pinch of salt and just a little bit of pepper as well. And whenever I'm cooking, I always like to say you can always add, but you can't take away. So I always go a little bit lighter on salt, pepper, seasonings overall, just because you can always add, but once it's in there, you can't take it away, especially with salt, because you know, salt really is in so many different places in the diet. But what's really nice about this recipe is we're using so many fresh ingredients, and only a couple of things are adding salt. So knowing that, we are able to add a little bit of salt onto the salmon. So I'm going to move this to the side just so you guys can see what I'm going to do next. I'm actually going to grab our potatoes. So we're going to do a couple of different things here. We're going to add some seasoning and spices to our potatoes and our Brussels sprouts. So what we did to prepare is we took red potatoes and just tried to cut them all about the same size. I made them about that big. So I quartered the small red potatoes. Perfect. And then my Brussels sprouts were huge today at the supermarket. So I ended up quartering them because, again, this was a quarter. So this was the size I went with as well. Whenever you're baking or cooking, you want it to be around the same size because it'll cook a little bit more evenly. So I always try to do that as best I can. All right, are you ready to season our veggies?
I'm ready.
Okay. So we're going to get started using avocado oil. I like to spray the oil first so it can really help the seasoning to stick. So I'm going to spray some avocado oil. What I love about avocado oil is that it's a high smoke point, meaning that when we cook even at higher temperatures, it still maintains and is stable at high temperatures. So it's a really great oil to cook with. Plus it has pretty mild flavor. I see Erin is using right from the bottle, which is also really great. If you are using a spray, I do like the white tops because it's just 100% oil in there in general. Generally speaking, everything that I've seen with these white tops are just oil. So that's a really nice thing as well. So I'm going to give a couple of sprays.
Is there a reason that you typically opt for the spray can rather than the liquid itself?
So I do really like to use what I have on hand. We actually ran out of our avocado oil recently, and I just finished our spray as well. So what I am really excited or proud of in our kitchen is that we are generally able to use things until they're complete. So again, that was something that took a little bit of time to get used to and to really be mindful of, but it's a really, really important and a really great thing to do to help limit food waste.
Absolutely.
But good question. All right, let me just grab a spoon. Okay, so our seasonings are going to be similar for our veggies. So I'm just going to get the oil pretty well incorporated in both. And while I'm seasoning these things, I want to make sure that everyone's oven is at 365 for the sheet pan. Wow, talk about timing. I don't know if you guys heard that beep, but that was my oven telling me it was at temperature. And then I'm also going to I'm going to make our Brussels sprouts on a cast iron. So I have like a small low griddle. So I'm going to do some Brussels sprouts that way. And then Erin's actually going to make the Brussels sprouts on the sheet pan to show you guys how easy a cleanup it could be. And we can show you the differences in how they come out. So if you do want to use the cast iron, I'm also going to set a medium heat for the cooktop. Now, I do like to mention that my cooktop is electric, so it can be a bit temperamental. So I just ask that you bear with me because it can be a little unexpected, but I'm sure it'll be great. All right, so what we're going to do next, now that our oil is really on our veggies, we're going to actually add really simply some salt and pepper. Great. And then what we're going to do from there is garlic and onion powder. So I like to be a little bit liberal with the onion powder because I feel like it's a little bit more mild than garlic powder. So I just kind of give it a couple of good shakes. And then we're also going to add some garlic powder. So I'm, again, a little bit less generous with the garlic powder, although I love garlic. And then we're also going to add some paprika to both. And what I love about this is depending on what the spice or seasoning is, you can really do it to your taste. Now, of course, you're not tasting while you're seasoning this, but if you wanted a little bit more after it's cooked, you can always add more. And then a fun ingredient that we're also going to use for these is a little bit of ground mustard. So we're just going to tap a couple of shakes in here. A couple of shakes in the Brussels sprouts. And then since my honey is being a little temperamental, I'm actually going to grab maple syrup for the Brussels sprouts. But Erin, if you want to use the honey on the Brussels sprouts. Here I'd say probably about a tablespoon. And then we're also going to add some sriracha. So I really like spice, so I'm going to add a decent amount of sriracha. So my Brussels sprouts will be cast iron maple sriracha, and Erin's will be sheet pan honey sriracha. So,
and then is the sriracha also going in the potatoes, or is it just in the Brussels sprouts?
So good question. I actually don't put it in potatoes, but you absolutely can if you want to. If you like the flavor of sriracha and you wanted to put that in there to give them a little bit of spice, you can do that. So what we're going to do is mix these up really well. And then the same thing with the Brussels sprouts. These aren't even cooked yet, and I can tell you that they smell so good. Erin, I don't know if that's the same with you, but
I'm so happy over here.
I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my salmon back over, my salmon pan. Okay, so I am placing the potatoes around the salmon on the sheet pan. And Erin's also gonna add the Brussels sprouts to this. I actually might add some Brussels sprouts too, because it's going to take a couple of batches for me to cook them. So even though we didn't mix sriracha into the potatoes, that's okay. The flavors all blend, I always say, which is really nice. Okay, so I'm going to add a couple of Brussels sprouts because why not? And then I will say, there's a lot of things that will come into play when we're cooking salmon or any type of meat or fish. You know, we're going to look at temperature, the cook time, the thickness of the salmon. So I'm going to start, once I put this in the oven, my timer at about 10 minutes just to take a look at it. My piece, I chose the less thick piece of salmon, so it would cook a little quicker. But whenever you're ready, Erin, I'm going to pop this in the oven, but you guys can see how beautiful the colors look and, you know, how delicious it looks. And now it's going by my nose and it smells so good too. So I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes just to check on it. And then since I have some extra Brussels sprouts, I'm going to do them on the cast iron too. And I think we're heated up pretty well.
So Sam, other than in the oven or on the cast iron, is there another way that you typically prepare Brussels sprouts?
Ooh, great question. So I really love them in the air fryer. Same with the potatoes, and I'll tell you guys what I do for that. But I was someone who really didn't like Brussels sprouts when I was younger because I felt like I never really cooked them right. Like the texture never felt right. The taste wasn't that good. And I guess maybe I could have seasoned them a little heavier, but once I learned how to kind of season them and try different seasonings and things like that, that really helped. But in the air fryer, I love how crispy they get. Erin, do you make them in the air fryer too?
I do. I usually put them in the oven a little bit first, and then I'll throw them in the air fryer to finish them off.
That's a good idea. I think if mine were this big, I would definitely do that because I feel like what happens with the air fryer is it cooks so quickly that it might cook the outside, but like the inside might have texture. So that's a really good idea. I like that tip. Sorry, I'm just going to stir this.
I also think the air fryer is great for leftovers. I'm excited if I have leftovers of this to put the potatoes into the air fryer because I think that'll be a great way to make sure I'm using everything, and they just taste so good in the air fryer.
Yeah, I mean, so what we did is actually my favorite seasoning for potatoes. And throwing them in the air fryer, especially the small white red potatoes, those cook so fast. I mean, in the air fryer, it could be like 10 to 12 minutes, right? So if you're short on time and maybe you have like thin chicken breast, or maybe you're throwing, even if you threw the salmon in and then did potatoes in the air fryer, there's so many different options. And what's nice is it'll get them really crispy in the air fryer. In the oven, they'll still get great texture, but in the air fryer is just different. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, for sure. And then that dressing that we put on top of the salmon, have you used that on anything else other, like a different protein or on a different fish? It smelled so good, so I was wondering what else I could put it on.
Yeah, I haven't, but I think it would be really nice on chicken. I love trying different marinades with chicken because chicken can be so boring sometimes. And maybe we have a staple recipe that's our go-to for chicken. Something else I did recently, I was doing more of like a Mediterranean style chicken, and I added Greek yogurt. It was like Greek yogurt, lemon juice, oregano, salt, pepper, garlic powder, and a little apple cider vinegar. And what I like to do with chicken and other types of meat that are a little more stable than fish is put them in a plastic bag with the marinade and zipper it. And then you can just massage the chicken breast with the marinade for a couple of minutes. And that helps to really integrate the flavor into the piece of meat quickly rather than waiting for it to marinate. And the Greek yogurt, I don't know, it made it like like not that it was creamy, but like it had a different texture on it. So that was a really nice addition. I don't know if you've ever worked with that before, but that was really fun as another way to kind of play with these things. But what I love about it is there's just, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a quick and easy marinade to make. So it's something that you could really just throw together and put on anything.
Absolutely. I actually think I will try this with chicken because I mean, honey Dijon chicken sounds amazing, right? And something I like to do to bread.
Sure.
Yeah. Something I like to do to bread the chicken is I actually use chickpea flour. And you could do the full breading. I love that too. With like a panko, if you do the flour, the egg, then the panko, or just regular breadcrumb. I really liked just adding a little bit of chickpea flour changes the outside. It makes it a little crunchy, especially if you're making it in the air fryer. So that's something we typically do as well, which is really nice.
Wow, I never would have thought of that. I don't think I've ever seen chickpea flour. Is that typically something that you can easily get at the grocery store?
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's Bob's Red Mill has it. I haven't seen it by any other brand, but it is available and it's really inexpensive too. So it's kind of a fun ingredient. We also make buffalo cauliflower. And what's really nice about that, we use the chickpea flour and again, an air fryer recipe, but we use the chickpea flour as the batter. So we combine the chickpea flour, water, garlic powder. In case you guys can't tell, I'm a big fan of the garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper. So we add that in there and mix it up. And what happens is it makes a nice, like a really nice texture, like around the cauliflower when you're going to fry it. So it crunches up really easily. So that's really fun. And then what you do is you just use some oil and buffalo or Frank's Red Hot, whatever you prefer, and just kind of brush it on and then heat it back up again. And it crisps up really nicely with the seasoning or with the dressing.
Wow, that's a great replacement for chicken wings, or something that you could really easily bring as an hors d'oeuvre to. I know the Super Bowl just passed, but any real party, I feel like that's a great dish to bring, and it's not too unhealthy because you get to substitute at least the chicken.
Yeah, plus chicken is usually available so many other ways too. So a different way to eat a vegetable is always fun, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The more ways we can disguise vegetables, the better, right?
Exactly. Do you have any tips for anything that you do with like different textures of vegetables or anything like that in your household?
So recently I've been really using the oven more than the air fryer. So I really love a crispy vegetable. So, and I think your point about the smoking point of the oil is something that I've been really struggling with because I've been using a lot of olive oil and I think it's burning the outside of the veggie rather than making it like it's crispy to the point where it's burnt. So I've been trying to really figure out how to better cook my veggies in the oven without them burning. So I'm going to try the avocado oil going forward instead of the olive oil and see if that is kind of my issue, because I think I'm cooking them at too high of a heat.
Maybe it definitely could be. It's so tricky with that too. And I will say, if you're using extra virgin olive oil, that generally has some protective properties, but it's still something to really think about, because it's just a better option overall. So I really like the avocado oil. Again, it's really mild flavor. So it's not like something like a coconut oil, which we know is actually pretty high in saturated fat. So it is something we still want to limit, but it is really nice. So it's definitely a mild flavor on top of having the smoke point benefits as well. So my Brussels sprouts are getting they're like blackening on the cast iron. I can tell their texture is getting better. I can't wait to show you guys what this looks like. How's your salmon doing, Erin? Is it, I'm going to turn the light on in my oven so I can take a look.
I was waiting for it to be fragrant in my apartment, but I'm not really smelling it, which I'm kind of surprised about.
Huh. Maybe once you open the oven door to mix up the mix up the items.
Ooh, they're looking good though.
Yeah. I'm so excited to try these Brussels sprouts. We had something similar the other night, and I always like to try to replicate things when we go to a like a restaurant and try to make the dishes at home, maybe even with a different oil, like an avocado oil, or like I said, trying to use the things that we do have. So this was something that my sister-in-law actually had made, and it came so good. So I was like, I'm going to try this. I'm really excited.
That's awesome. I did the same thing recently with a taco recipe. It was a broccoli taco, and it was so great. It's just a shallot vinaigrette with vinegar, olive oil, shallots, and a little bit of like fresh garlic, and you just blend it together and then cook the broccoli in the oven and then just marinate it afterwards, and then put it in the cast iron. It was so good, and it's like become a staple. With a little feta on top. It was fantastic.
That sounds amazing. And there's a couple of things you said there that I want to talk about. We were talking about vegetables, right? And how vegetables, eating them in different textures. Something for tacos that I really like to get is like different types of slaw. So there are a lot of different shredded vegetables that are available. So forget the brand name, but they have a lot of like a variety. So it isn't just your cabbage and your carrots. There's so many other things in there, especially they have like a broccoli or cauliflower slaw. So if you're not a fan of those vegetables, if you're eating them shredded, plus making a slaw out of them, so you're adding some type of dressing to it, it's a really fun way of incorporating things you might not typically eat because their flavor really isn't overpowering. So I love that. And then the other thing is dressing, right? Dressing is so easy to make. Let's check on this and then I'll get back to dressing. I think my salmon's close to done, actually. Ooh. How's it looking over there, Erin?
It looks good. My salmon was 8 ounces, so I think it was a little bit thicker than yours. So I'm probably going to put it back in for just a little bit, but the veggies are starting to brown up a little bit, which looks great.
Yeah, I definitely need some more time. So I'm going to put it in for another 5. And then since I know that my food's probably almost done, right? So the spoon that I was using around the raw salmon went down into the sink. Again, like sometimes it's just what we do, right? We end up picking up the spoon that we use. So I always just put it right into the sink. It's a rule in our kitchen. I have to show you guys these Brussels sprouts, but I have to put on 2 oven mitts because the cast iron's so heavy. This is what the cast iron Brussels sprouts look like. And they're still smoky, as you can see. I can't wait to try them. I love cooking with the cast iron. Do you have a cast iron at home, Erin?
I do. I absolutely love it. I've had it for several years now, so I feel like it's like an old friend. But I absolutely love it. I used to make my Brussels sprouts on it all the time. Then I got kind of into the air fryer. Now I'm back to the oven. I feel like I go through a rotation. So I'm excited to get back to using it a little bit more.
I do too. It's funny.
You were
sometimes
talking
it ends
about
up being what's
dressings
convenient.
before, Sam.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. So with that, the shallot vinaigrette you mentioned, I just wanted to touch on how easy it is to make salad dressings. Like, we always think about, like, when we look at stuff in the supermarket, sometimes it could be higher in fats, higher in salt, but really to make your own dressing at home it can be pretty easy. One of my go-to staples is really just oil. I like the apple cider vinegar. That's a great way to use it too for the benefits, because the science is really still out there on apple cider vinegar. So when people ask me about it, I always say, if it doesn't bother you, put it in salad dressing, because that's a great way to use it. So I like the apple cider vinegar, oil. Sometimes I'll add the Dijon mustard, honey, salt, pepper, garlic. Or even if you just want to do oil, vinegar, even if it's red wine vinegar, depending on what I'm having, I really like that flavor. Salt, pepper, garlic powder. Like, it's really easy. And using fresh garlic too will be a little more, I think it's more aromatic also. So that's another option too, but it's so versatile. I actually made a Caesar dressing the other day, and the base of it was tahini, which is sesame seeds, which is really cool. So that was another fun one. And again, a little bit more nutrition coming from a base, or, I don't typically eat sesame seeds. So that was a fun way of using tahini.
Yeah. And then you get to control what's in it too. So like, you get to control how much salt and how much of any added components that like maybe are keeping it having a longer shelf life, but maybe aren't as healthy for us overall. So I think that's a great way to mix things in. I'm going to definitely steal that. Do you store your dressings in anything specific?
It's a really great question. I use an airtight Tupperware usually. I have yet to find one of those dressings pourers that I like, or dressing containers that I like. But also, when you're making your own dressing, it's not something you would keep in your refrigerator the same way that you would keep a dressing that you purchased from the store. So I usually tell people in 2 to 3 days, it's time to make a new one. So just being mindful of that. So it's not something you'd want to make a huge batch of and just like kind of let it sit in your fridge, because there's no preservatives there. But it's kind of the same rule when you cook something. It's usually about 2 to 3 days. So I always like to mention that as well. All right, I'm going to take a look at our salmon again, because we have another minute. Oh, this looks good. I think we're done here. How's it looking over there?
I'm going to let it run out this last minute, because it's looking a little bit, I think it's just a little bit thicker than yours, but
that's okay.
Smelling
and
great.
That's what we said too in the beginning, right? It all depends on the size and the thickness of the salmon, your oven overall, right? That's always the thing too. So it is really important to just pay attention to that. Always with recipes too. I always tell people about that. Nobody really thinks about like having a gas range versus an electric range. Sometimes the electric range I always say, sometimes it has a mind of its own. So I like to kind of play it by ear and see what happens. But that's what cooking is about. That's what makes it fun, right? Like, sometimes the recipes have to change a little bit. If you do have an electric cooktop at home, I always say trying to cook things a little bit shorter time, because it can heat up really quickly, or depending on what type of pan you're using on the electric cooktop. It's definitely a good idea to make sure that, your stuff is cooked exactly the way you want to, even if the recipe time is different. Because all of our equipment's different. Go ahead.
I had just a salmon question, I suppose. So how exactly do you tell if your salmon is done? Like, what are the telltale signs that you're looking for your salmon to be done?
That's a really great question. So with salmon, I actually always recommend using, with any meat, seafood, fish, anything that you can get a temp of, I usually recommend using a kitchen thermometer. Ooh. Oh my goodness, this looks so good. So I'm going to take a look and see if our salmon's done. And I'll tell you guys what to look for. Generally, like you want it to flake really well, but you can always double check because these are updated, these guidelines. You could always check the FDA, but for salmon, it's generally 145 you want it to be at least, and you want to check it in the thickest part of the salmon. So I have a digital thermometer here. So I'm going to stick it right into the thickest part, making sure that it's not touching the pan. I actually have a ways to go. I'm going to give it another couple minutes. All right, everyone, we put our salmon in for about another 5 to 7 minutes. And again, I know we mentioned that cook time is going to vary depending on the thickness of the salmon, their oven, all of those factors. So I'm getting ready to pull mine out and we should be past 145. Oh, I heard Erin's timer there.
It's a friendly timer on this one. I know.
It is. Mine is not. Okay. Let's see what we have here. All right, great. We are way past that threshold, which is awesome. And I really like salmon, especially if you like overcook it a little bit. It's so moist from the fat that you can't even really tell compared to some other things if you do overcook them. All right, so I am going to show you first what it looks like on our sheet pan cook, and then I'm going to put it on a plate for everyone to see as well. So if you guys want to take a look at our sheet pan here, it's got our beautiful salmon. Our Brussels sprouts are nice and crispy. Our potatoes are soft. So we're going to plate this up. This here. I rarely get to use my fish spatula, so when I can, it's very exciting. So again, this is 2 servings. I will say the skin came off pretty easily as well, which is nice. I love when that happens. So I'm going to put some potatoes. And as you guys recall, I put some Brussels sprouts in here, but I'm going to take the one from my cast iron. So those are nice and charred and crispy. Okay, and just because I think it needs a little red, I'm going to add some paprika onto the salmon to give it a little bit more beautiful color. Okay, and here we go. Can you guys see?
Looks great, Sam.
Nice crispy Brussels sprouts. We've got beautiful salmon and our deliciously seasoned potatoes, which I'm really excited to use. All right, great. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And we hope you really enjoyed this recipe. Let us know if you make it. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more amazing content.